Hi, I'm Adam and welcome back to First Man Photography, where today we're taking the fear out of printing so you can turn your photos into something beautiful, something physical and something meaningful with lasting value. I love printing days. Let's go. Before we get going today though, this video is sponsored by Squarespace. If you need a domain name, a website or an online store, make your next move with Squarespace. Right, I'm going to break this down to show you each stage of printing, including the gear, paper choice, file prep, cost, calibration, and presentation. Most of this applies whether you're printing in a lab or doing it yourself at home. And we're creating artwork here, so we're looking for technique rather than a technical buzzkill. The reason printing can be a nerve-wracking experience is because we have to commit resources to it, particularly time and money, and it's not really something we're always used to with digital photography. But this is exactly why it's so special. It's the point when that photo becomes a physical piece of artwork with genuine value. There's three simple reasons why I think printing is important. Number one, the price of digital content will always trend to zero. I made a full video about this the other week, but digital photographs can be duplicated to infinity basically for free, and this destroys their value over time. It's also the main reason why NFTs will never work. On the other hand, printing makes your artwork physical, so it suffers no such problem. If the photographer is good, there's also every chance the price will go up over time. Number two is backup. I bet the vast majority of your photos and almost all of human knowledge these days is stored digitally. When the zombie apocalypse arrives, I like the idea of some dogged survivor stumbling across the ruins of my studio and seeing an image of the Lake District for the first time. It's daft, I know, but there is an important point there. Number three is it's just fucking awesome and much more meaningful than anything digital. It's brilliant creating your own prints and seeing them come to life, but it's also going to be something that people want to put on their wall. I also find that it provides focus when I'm out on the hill, helping me to slow down and craft the best possible composition I can, because I know I'm going to be printing it. This video is not specific to printing at home, and using a lab is a great option. I've been using the Print Space in London for years, and they create very high quality prints. You won't be sorry if you use them and you are here in the UK. Most modern printers, though, are capable of producing decent prints if you use photo paper. But if you do decide you want something a bit bigger, then the Canon Pro 300 and Pro 1000 are great options and print up to A3 Plus and A2 respectively. I've used Canon printers for years now. The Canon software makes it really easy and they produce fantastic results. Today, I'm going to be using the Canon Pro 1000, which I did buy with my own money many years ago, although I am now working with Canon, so, you know. We're going to keep this one brief because it has a high techno babble rating, and whilst calibration is not strictly necessary, if we want the colours of our final print to resemble what we see on the screen, it is something worth thinking about. That does not mean you need to go straight out and buy an expensive monitor though. The easiest thing I think to start with is matching the printer you're going to use to the paper you have chosen. We do this by installing a small plugin into our editing software called an ICC profile. If you're printing at a lab, the good ones will have ICC profiles that you can download from them. And if you're using your own printer, go to the paper manufacturer's website and just download the profiles from there that match your printer and then install them. In Lightroom Classic, we then just click on soft proofing, select the correct profile for the printer and paper that we're using, and the software will then simulate how that photo will look on that particular paper. If you don't have a high-end monitor, or that kind of expensive calibration tool. Printing out a small copy first and making some adjustments based on that will do the job just fine. With experience, for example, I also know my monitor has a bit of a magenta shift, so I often just add a slight green tint back into it to balance it out. Even now, I still very rarely get things right first time, so practice, perseverance, and experience will be your friend here. It's often said that printing is an art form unto itself, and the reason for this is because photography, like any art form, uses the artistic elements. But the difference with photography to something like painting is these elements are controlled at different stages of the process. There are 7 artistic elements, and lines, shape, form, and space are almost entirely controlled at the time of shooting through our use of composition. The remaining 3, texture, colour, and value, are much more influenced in the post-processing and printing stage, but we want to think carefully about value and colour when preparing our file for print. I've made a full video about this on the Raw Room before, which you can now access subscription-free, so go and check that out. But if we just printed the file that we have edited for screen, it almost certainly will not look right when we print it because the screen is backlit, whereas on paper, we're looking at reflected light. Value is how light or dark a particular tone appears in the image, and this was used by Ansel Adams in creating his zone system. We're gonna print my first image here from last week, but when we print, even with a calibrated monitor, we need to adjust the values to compensate for the loss of the backlight. So we start by clicking soft proofing and create a soft proof, which is essentially a virtual copy with an ICC profile. We're then left with a screen version and a print version. All I often do is increase the exposure of the print version by 1/3 of a stop, which brings the value of all the tones up, including the colours. This probably works for me about 60% of the time, but there are other occasions where I might have to control the value of just one colour or globally raise the shadows a bit. This is particularly true if I use my Sunset Rocks preset. This kind of adds a vignette which looks great on screen, but once printed often looks harsh and it can make the sky look too dark. So I just back the vignette off for my prints. All of my presets are now available on the Raw Room and it's just £7.99 for the lot. You can check them out on the link down below. Again though, it really just comes down to practice and personal taste, but the paper we use also has a big effect on value and colour and how the overall image will look. We'll discuss paper choice in just a second, but as you know, this video is sponsored by Squarespace. Now, if you are a photographer, then running your own website is the best possible way to share your story with the world. And with Squarespace, it's just so easy to get set up. And unlike social media, you control how your images are presented. You can start by just using one of their beautiful templates. Put some of your own images on there and a little bit of your text. And then before you know it, you will have a unique and beautiful looking website. You don't need any coding knowledge either, and it will dynamically adjust to look perfect on all of your screens, including a phone, which is especially important these days. You can start with a simple gallery, but as you grow, you can then upgrade your site to an online store where you can easily start selling things like prints or books or anything else that takes your fancy. It also now has a member section if you want to run a subscription service, and in the unlikely event that you run into trouble, they have award-winning customer service. I've used Squarespace for years and I've just really never looked back because they are so good. So go to squarespace.com to start your free trial today, and then if you like what you've created, use the offer code FIRSTMAN to get 10% off your first purchase. The paper choice for our prints can make a massive difference to the look and the feel, and many photographers will often find they have their own favourite paper. At first, the choice can be overwhelming, but in reality, there are really only 3 kinds of paper: matte, semi-gloss, and full gloss. It gets confusing because they often have different names that describe the branding or the materials used. So matte papers can be called rag paper or cotton rag, smooth or fine art paper. Semi-gloss is often called luster or burrito, which refers to the coating on the paper, and glossy can be called high gloss, pro platinum, or pro paper, something like that. Whether you choose matte, semi-gloss, or full gloss, though, it is worth buying dedicated photo paper because it's just gonna look better. Paper choice has a big influence on colour and value. So, for example, matte papers often make blacks look much more intense in the image. So I find I have to be very careful with my shadows and often lift them a little to maintain detail in the darker areas using matte paper. Sometimes it's even quite extreme, like this image here, where I had to raise the shadows significantly to make the print come out looking like it does on the screen version. There's something just so lovely about cotton rag matte papers though, and many people prefer it because it gives that high quality fine art feel to your print. Then, as a general rule, glossy papers will make the colours look more punchy and saturated. I also think glossy papers are good for images with water in them because it adds that kind of natural reflective surface that you would expect from water. In many instances, I find full gloss can be a bit much. It works really well for my water drops, but my personal favourite is semi-gloss, and particularly this Burrito Photographique from Canson. Another consideration, especially if using a lab, is choosing between Ghistly and C-type prints. Ghistly is basically inkjet, like the printer here, but C-type is different. It uses a special photosensitive paper and a very large machine that exposes your image onto the paper itself. It's then run through photographic chemicals and the image develops on the paper itself. I love C-type and it feels very authentic, finishing with that genuine photographic process. I use it for all my images that are larger than A2, and for really big prints like that one behind me, it actually works out cheaper because you're not paying for all that pigment ink. With C-type though, you are going to struggle to get a matte finish, and even this Fuji matte paper here still has a semi-gloss feel to it. But one of the benefits is that it's a bit more robust. Because the image is exposed inside the paper, you can wipe down the image if something gets spilled on it because there's no ink on the surface that will run out. One final paper consideration is the opportunity of using a textured paper. These can often enhance prints that already have strong textures in the image and can give an almost like 3D feel. I use these for images like these where there is a gritty element, but sometimes I feel it can be a bit distracting, so I just resort back to my favourite semi-gloss. I made a video last year where I broke down all the costs of printing at home. But if you print a lot, then using a lab can quickly add up and a home printer starts to make more sense. Printing can be expensive, but like all other artistic forms, there is an ongoing cost for materials, and it shouldn't, I don't think, really be considered that unusual. You can also keep costs right down by using good quality photo paper in a normal A4 printer and printing small on paper like this 4x6 paper. In another video I did last year, I printed out these framed prints here, and I think they still make lovely bits of artwork that is still more than suitable for a shelf or smaller portion of wall. To be honest, I've got to the point now where I'd give up all but one of my lenses before I had to give up my printer. So let's fire up the printer again. And I had a magical evening on last week's video, one of those moments that doesn't fail to inspire, and I walked away with an image I was very happy with. So here we are. I'm absolutely thrilled with this, and I really feel like I've captured the mood of the evening. This is now available to buy on my website or on the Raw Room. I'll put a link down below. There's only 10 available before they are gone forever, so please do check it out and consider supporting me. Now, one thing I often get asked is what I do with my prints. Well, obviously I sell them. I made a video about this the other week, which you can check out, but before I ship them off, I always put the title and edition number in the bottom left, and then assign the bottom right. I use a pencil on cotton rag matte paper like this, and a grey pen on gloss papers because the pencil doesn't work. Like you can see here, I ship them rolled in a tube, or for more expensive framed prints, I use a flat packed box. Gifting photography is also another great option and can have a huge impact if the image means something to the person you are gifting it to, and they can always feel the time and energy and effort that you poured into it. And I just think it's a very meaningful gift, although you do have to be careful not to spam family members with your prints. The idea of trading prints came up the other week as well, and I've got to be honest, I'm not a big fan of this, particularly some of these platforms that have started to crop up. It might initially seem like a good idea, but I think what it actually does is devalue photography down to the point where the work is priced at nothing more than the cost of production. For a sustainable economy to be maintained, I think, around buying and selling prints, then a monetary value needs to apply. I also put prints up on the wall. I have a couple at home, and it acts like a bit of a gallery here at the studio, but otherwise I just keep them in a big box, like a giant photo album that you can take to places and show to people, and I promise you it has a much bigger impact than sticking your little phone screen in someone's face. Finally, I also sometimes frame them, and you can watch how to do that over on the Raw Room. So yeah, hit the link to check out the print, and I'll see you again very, very soon. Have fun printing, give it a go, and that's it. Bye.